There's no case of the Mondays here. It's Orange Blue today. Cecil Lammey, Andrew Mason, Denver Broncos, and yeah, the need at running back is there, Mace, but there can be answers all over the place for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, and it's possible we're talking about a two-pronged solution. You and I have talked about 2 and 2 as far as running backs and tight ends for the draft, but what if part of the solution comes from free agency, at least maybe the guarantee on the box, as they say in Tommy Boy, could be that solution in free agency. And that guy pictured right there, Aaron Jones, long time with the Green Bay Packers, last season of the Minnesota Vikings. In this market, he's kind of the guarantee on the box based on what he did last year in Minnesota, which came on the heels of a very consistent career when he was with the Green Bay Packers.
Yes, consistency is the name of the game, and we are here for you, Cecil Lammey, Andrew Mason. Let's talk about the UTEP two-step and Aaron Jones. And George Payton knows him well from being in that division and watching him show up and just show out and be a stud for the Green Bay Packers. He goes to the Minnesota Vikings. When healthy, Mace, he's still a stud. But how much can that continue?
When healthy, he's still a stud. And when he was with the Packers, when he did well, usually the Packers did well. There was a greater correlation to success between Aaron Jones doing well and the team winning than there was with Aaron Rodgers, at least by the numbers. There was a piece I did on that back in 2023 when Jones and the Packers came to Denver and faced the Broncos. You can find that deep in the archives at denversports.com. But the question really is, how much does he have left in the tank? Because he is going into year 9. He is on the other side of 30. He turned 30 in December. And so that is where you talk about a danger zone. And so he's definitely still a productive back, but this is also where you talk about a lot of running backs tend to have that production fall off a cliff once they get into that 9th season. And I dove into some of the numbers about that. We'll get into that here later on in the show about running backs with the sort of workload that Aaron Jones has had over his career and what happens when they get into year 9 and beyond.
Yeah, year 9 and beyond. Interesting to get into those numbers. But first and foremost, Jones is the type of guy that can do it all. You know, he doesn't need to come off the field. This will be a two-pronged approach and also be a two-headed running back by committee. So is he Kamara or is he Ingram in this scenario?
He can be whatever you want him to be. And that's actually sort of what makes this interesting if the Broncos did bring in Aaron Jones, is that he could be a joker type of back operating in space, but he could also be the every down, primarily working on the ground back between the tackles. To kind of look at the Sean Payton history, I'd say peak New Orleans running backs was 2017, the year they had Mark Ingram in his 7th season and Alvin Kamara as a rookie. And they, of course, drafted Kamara in the 3rd round that year, which certainly tells Sean Payton, hey, I can find that guy in the draft if I don't get that guy at the top of the draft. But Aaron Jones is the type of running back to where, all right, I can slot him into this mix based on whatever type of running back I get. George Payton talked last week how there are so many different flavors of running back. So, okay, let's say you go through the draft and you come out with Brashard Smith of SMU. Okay, he's your joker. Aaron Jones is your more traditional first and second down, every down running back. If you come out of the draft with Caleb Johnson, with whom the Broncos did meet, slamming it between the tackles, Aaron Jones becomes more of your guy in space. That's actually one of the things that may have some appeal to the Broncos here, is he offers flexibility based on what is in the mystery box, which is that running back from the draft, not knowing who or what type of running back they're going to come out of the draft with, because they do draft deep enough to where it really becomes harder to project. At 12 last year, they could have a pretty good idea once they zeroed in on Bo Nix that they were going to get him. Where they are at 20 and beyond certainly gets a bit hard to project and say, we're going to get that guy.
We're going to get that guy, because there's different types of guys in this draft class. And I don't think they would draft him with the idea that he could be the Ingram. But let's say, for example, Taj Brooks, who you and I saw at the Shrine Bowl, actually super excited about him and then wasn't really impressed. He didn't make my notebook. It's difficult for running backs. I get that. But he had a nice 40, so it's got people talking. And I'm sure your mentions are full of like, this guy's fast. What do you think the Broncos should? Yes, we get it. It's about time speed, but it's more about pad speed. And when you look at Aaron Jones, a 5th round pick from UTEP. So yeah, these guys are going to be out there. And Jones, as you mentioned, Mace, he can be either one of what you want.
That's probably what distinguishes him in this free agent class from some of the others. Now, then it becomes the price has to be right. And that's where we get into diving into the numbers. It's almost like you're an actuary and you're going through the actuarial tables to say, okay, this is, what we're willing to insure here. It comes down to what you're willing to pay and what type of contract that you want. So just to go through it here, Aaron Jones is one of the running backs who has over 1,500 touches in his first 8 seasons. So to go through those running backs, there are 50 running backs who had 1,500 plus touches and then played into their 9th season and beyond in the last 30 years. We're starting with Thurman Thomas in 1996, going into his 9th season with the Buffalo Bills. So you've got a sample size of 50 running backs that got to year 9 and had 1,500 plus touches in their first 8 years. So those 50 running backs would play 139 total seasons from year 9 onward. Of those 139 total seasons, 39 of them saw them get 1,100 plus yards from scrimmage. But of those 39 campaigns, 23 came in the 9th year, just 16 times with 1,100 plus yards from scrimmage for those running backs in year 10 and beyond. So basically, with Aaron Jones, you've got a pretty good chance, if you pick him up, of him being productive for at least one more year. The real danger zone is going to come beyond this. So you want to, if you're looking at Aaron Jones, you want to structure a contract to where you've got minimal risk, to where, let's say something happens this year and he gets injured, and you say, okay, he's probably not in our plans going forward, because that's another thing. If you have an injury in year 9, your chances of bouncing back year 10, year 11 are very slim. And so you're going to want to move on from that contract. In that case, you would need to give Aaron Jones a type of deal that would allow you to get out of it in 2026 with a relatively minimal dead money hit. So if you give him a 2-year contract, is it 2 years, $16 million, and it's front loaded, and it's, say, $10 million guaranteed, and you're front loading that guarantee to where if you cut him in 2026, you're only left with $2 million of dead money, something like that. That's the sort of structure you may want to have.
Yeah, you're going to have that based on Jones. And again, as we've said, if he's healthy, he's going to produce, but for how much longer? And I don't want to put you on the spot, Mace, but that number 150 in running backs, that seemed large to me. And of course you did the research, so of course that's correct. But I do have to ask you, did it seem like a lot of those came from the 90s? Because as you mentioned, you texted me this you texted me this 2 hours ago. You said you were researching it. And I was like, okay, that seemed to be something back in the day. You remember, I mean, Ricky Waters, all those guys, it's what you did back then. But you say, no, this is maybe not a more recent trend, but not something that's just strictly Thurman Thomas and Ricky Waters and all those guys we remember well.
Actually, sort of the peak on this, appears to be like getting into the early to mid 2000s, when you saw guys like this that had their careers go to year 9 and beyond, because I mean, these are names that were big in the 90s, but they played deep into the 2000s. I'm speaking of names like Warwick Dunn, Tiki Barber, Corey Dillon, who, of course, had that big game against the Broncos back in 2000. I'm just looking here and I'm looking at my list right now. Fred Taylor, Amon Green, Edgerrin James, Ricky Williams, Sean Alexander, Jamal Lewis, LaDainian Tomlinson, Clinton Portis, Brian Westbrook. Willis McGahee, of course, came here to Denver, and now he had a great year in year 8 when he came in. Now it was actually 9 in terms of his experience, right, in terms of where he was contractually. It was year 8 in terms of his playing experience, because that rookie year he sat out with the injury that he had in the Fiesta Bowl. So it's a little bit of a kind of a gray area on him in terms of production. But kind of the peak of this is kind of from about like 2004 to about 2015 or so, because on the back end of this are guys like Maurice Jones-Drew, D'Angelo Williams, Marshawn Lynch. Now here's an interesting thing, Cease, as we fast forward to today. We're sitting here right now, and we're looking at a bunch of running backs who are productive, and they're lasting to their 8th year, because I'm going to name some backs that are going into their 9th year right now. Okay. Joe Mixon, James Conner, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones. These are all backs with 1,500 plus touches who are going into their 9th season. And these are all guys that I'm naming players who are still productive. So actually, it's funny to think that we went through a time where we didn't have many of these guys, and it seems like we're about to have a bunch of these guys. We're about to have another wave of these running backs making it to 9 and 10 years, because the names I just mentioned are still very productive running backs.
Yeah, the only one out of that group I'd say is Dalvin Cook. Like, you don't want him. And then Eckler's a little bit different, but that's a good sign, Mace. That makes me happy. That makes me happy, not only for the running backs, but just for this game. Like, your veteran backs can still get it done. And I know the chat room, it's mainly split, but some people, I don't want a free agent running back. Well, if you get them for the right price,
yes, and
the right situation, there's no guarantee you're getting Ashton Genty. There's no guarantee you're getting O'Marion Hampton, who might be gone by 20. So, it's a conversation to be had for sure, and it might be part of their formula.
And look, what if one of those two dropped and you got a free agent and you got this guy?
Mm-hmm.
Sean Payton knows he can't fit 3 running backs, but he wants 2. His system has functioned best with 2. We mentioned Kamara and Ingram. You can go all the way back to his first season in New Orleans when he had Reggie Bush and Deuce McAllister. There were some people in the Saints organization very high up who, when he drafted Reggie Bush, they're like, oh, no, we got Deuce. And Sean Payton was like, oh, look, first of all, we weren't expecting to be able to get Reggie Bush. They thought Houston was going to take him. But, of course, Houston went with Mario Williams. But second of all, Deuce McAllister, Reggie Bush, different types of backs. And they worked really well together and helped that offense, along with Drew Brees, Marshall, a turnaround from 3-13 to 10-6 in the NFC Championship game. So Sean Payton wants 2 backs. It'll keep everyone fresher. The other thing on Aaron Jones, we talk about how, okay, the bottom can fall out at some point.
Sure.
If you, in any scenario where Aaron Jones comes in and you're talking about a timeshare with whoever you end up drafting, then you're potentially extending the career of Aaron Jones as well, to where there's a better chance that 2-year contract that you give him, hypothetically, which I think 2 years, $16 million, 10 guaranteed. I think that's a right-sized kind of contract for him in terms of your risk relative to where he stands in terms of experience. I think if you give him that, I think that's a fair deal. The question is, will Aaron Jones think it's a fair deal? Will there be someone out there willing to give more? And if that's the case, hey, you know what? Let someone pay him more. But I think that's a sort of deal that may make some sense for both parties.
I think the streets are going to be cold for these free agent running backs because of this back class. So if you're Aaron Jones, and by the way, I think it's Alec Lewis. I hope I got that name right. Yes, Athletic. Alec Lewis reporting the Vikings probably going to go with the committee even if they keep Aaron Jones. I think this league has figured out 2 backs the way to go.
2 backs, and especially you go with a committee. Even if you're the Vikings and you bring back Aaron Jones, you draft somebody. If you don't feel good about your committee now, you build that committee because it's a great year to build it based on the depth of this running back class. I mean, Devin Neal is going to be productive for somebody, and he's going to go in the middle rounds. Brashard Smith is going to be a very unique weapon for somebody, and certainly when I caught up with him on Friday and he talked about what he discussed with the Broncos in their meeting, I mean, did that not scream Joker right there? I mean, he might be able to step in and give you everything you want as a Joker right away if you bring him in.
Converted wide receiver.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the only question on Brashard Smith is, he's sitting there 192, 194. Could you get him up to 200? Just get a little more muscle on him and keep his speed and quickness. If that's the case, then I think then you'd have a real potent weapon there in that role.
Well, look at all the backs, not all the backs, but when you started out the list of backs that you were talking about, Mace, and Tiki Barber and Warwick Dunn, they're little guys. They're smaller backs.
Yeah, and some of them are just like, I mean, Warwick Dunn, for whatever reason, was made out of iron. I mean...
and a heart of gold.
Yeah, that guy was, he could take a pounding, but there was something else that helped Warwick Dunn last 12 years in this league. He was always sharing the load. In Tampa Bay, he was sharing it with Mike Allstott, the great fullback that they had back in the day, the A-Train. He gets to Atlanta, and he's sharing the load somewhat with other running backs, but he's sharing it with a quarterback who was capable of 1,000-yard season, and that was Michael Vick. So that was an interesting thing for Warwick Dunn, is that he was never in a situation where he had to completely carry the Falcons' ground game on his own. He always had some assistance, and thus he was able to be productive and operate with some degree of load management, which is why, even though he was a smaller back, he was able to last 12 years. It's honestly, it was part of when the Broncos had Philip Lindsay a few years ago. I was hoping they would manage him the way that the Bucs managed Warwick Dunn early. And it's part of why there was a moment I was optimistic when they brought in Melvin Gordon in 2020. And I thought, okay, this might work, right? This might take some of the load off Phil, and you might really have something. But, Pat Shurmur didn't really use the resources properly, to put it kindly.
Yeah. It was TJ Duckett in Atlanta, right?
TJ Duckett
Michigan
for a little while there. Yep. So you had TJ Duckett and Warwick Dunn, but again, you also had, Michael Vick capable of firing off 1,000-yard season. And so it was a real, you had these elements in play for Warwick Dunn that ensured that he didn't have to carry the load on his own.
So we think the money is going to be spent on inside linebacker, maybe on tight end, although the name of the tight end may be different in terms of not Juwan Johnson.
We'll see.
We'll see about that. Chances of a running back. And let's put the number at 16 million, because that's, if I could get Aaron Jones more around the 12 million range.
Yeah.
That would make me a little happier. I don't know if that's realistic, but again, what kind of market will he have? If you're Rico Dowdle, if you're Aaron Jones, guys that are coming off 1,000-yard seasons, you're still going to have a slower market. If you're Nick Chubb, you might have to wait till August to get a shot.
Well, Nick Chubb, with the injuries and that he's had the injury history there and the lack of production since then, I mean, he might be waiting a long time.
I hate that for him because I love Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I mean, good dude, great player, but I think he's sort of in the Javonte Williams category, right?
Yeah,
someone
Javonte.
great before. I mean, Javonte Williams might be waiting a long time. I think when George Payton was getting up there last week and declaring that he's the best pass protecting running back in the NFL and saying, "Oh, there's a chance he could be back." I didn't take that as really there's a huge chance he's coming back to the Broncos unless he just sits on the market and they bring him back in much the same way they brought the late Ronnie Hillman back in 2016 after he lingered on the market. It was, to me, it was more, I'm trying to sell him around the league to say, okay, this guy has a skill that people could use. Take a look at him because the streets are looking pretty cold for these guys, and they're going to look cold for someone like Javonte Williams, who post-injury has not averaged even 4 yards a carry in each of those 2 seasons.
Yeah, and it's not as simple as that for the viewing audience, Mace, but when you look at Aaron Jones, what did he average last year? 4.5 a carry?
Yeah.
So it's like he's still getting it done. And 4.9, I'm looking at it right now, 4.9 as a career average. So the guy, he's not what he used to be, 4.5 a carry. And it can fall off at any time. By the way, 50 receptions. It can fall off at any time, but we would have seen signs if it's like, he's not what he used to be. Okay, but it's 4.5 a carry. It's a healthy average for a veteran back like that. So you like seeing that.
I mean, if you really want to say, okay, he's gone from 5.3 to 4.6 to 4.5, 2022 to 2023, 2024. So if you want to kind of look there, maybe if you want to look at success rate, which calculates things relative to down and distance and what you accomplish, on first down, for instance, it calculates that, not necessarily moving the chains, but setting up second and short. Like his success rate last year was the second lowest of his career on the ground, but his success rate in the pass game, 58.1, was the highest of his career. So that's another thing that's also interesting with some of these running backs. As they get older, they get to be better pass catchers, more effective in space.
And you know what that means? It means they can pass block.
Yes,
because you're not on the field in third down situations if you can't pass block. So and this is for the anti-veteran back crowd. We're not saying break the bank for Aaron Jones, but for the anti-veteran back crowd, listen, we know the running back class is great, but here's the thing: you get a guy that can step in, trusted in pass pro from day one, is a runner, is a receiver out of the backfield, can either be your Mark Ingram or your Alvin Kamara based on who you get in the draft. So I think it's wise, again, provided the price is good and the price is right, to be considering an all-purpose back like an Aaron Jones.
The key thing is the price. You do not want this to be an overpay.
No.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be.
Yeah, your big expenditure is going to be at linebacker. I think the real question is, how much do you want to spend at safety, and what kind of situation you want to create? Do you want to create there? Do you want somebody who clearly comes in and is going to take the job probably of PJ Locke, or do you want somebody who's going to compete with and push PJ Locke? Someone, or a third safety in the mix to just make sure you're better covered depth-wise, because as we saw last year when Devin Key had to go in, it wasn't great, right? So what level are you looking for there? And also in the next few days, do you try to get something done with DJ Jones as well? Or do you roll the dice and maybe try to bring in Poona Ford? Poona Ford might be a little bit more expensive than DJ Jones. The question is, do you believe he's better than DJ Jones?
Questions with answers coming up in a week. When legal tampering begins, free agency will be right here before you know it. Mace, it's going by too fast.
Phrase. That is the dumbest phrase.
What's that?
Legal tampering. I hate that.
It's an oxymoron.
Yeah, what are we doing here? Just start the period.
What are we doing here? The tampering happens all the time.
There was tampering going on at the combine, for crying out loud.
What do you mean?
Agents, yeah. I mean,
yeah. Mm-hmm. That's correct. All right, Mace. Before we're out of here, just kicking off the week, we got a big week planned for you. How can folks help us out on YouTube?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell.
so that you never miss a
Yeah.
vid. That's right. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammy saying OBT's BFD. Thanks much for watching. Stay tuned. Stay frosty.